Podcast.
It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. This episode, the audio edition of my weekly newsletter, that is called Big Podcast Insider. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. All the links, everything that I'm talking about, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. And what am I talking about? The $79 computer. Episode notes on steroids. How to overcome writer's block. 15 principles of guest booking. How to remove the background from images for free. If podcasts were honest, I've got some classified ads for you, including AI tools and an easy way for you to book podcast guests. Also, how to get an ad yourself on this podcast and the newsletter. It's only $35, a deal. This episode is brought to you by Riverside.fm. If you're doing remote interviews, and who doesn't these days, and you want unbelievably high recording quality, and who doesn't want that? You want Riverside.fm. Unbelievably high recording quality, regardless of your or your guest's internet connection. That's because everything is recorded locally. Then it goes up to the cloud. Then you can edit it and make it sound even better. You simply send a link that your guest will click on. It opens up the Riverside studio in the Chrome browser. It is as easy as that. No matter where in the world your guest is, where you are, what the speed of your internet connection, you're going to sound like you're in the same room. And here's how to try it out for free. Go to riverside.fm. You're going to get 2 hours. Kick the tires, look under the hood, see how you like it. And when you do, here's a discount code for you to use. Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. That's riverside.fm. The code Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. We're going to run this thing like an old school children's audiobook. When it's time to turn the page, go to the next article in this case, you're going to hear this. Got it? Let's go. The $79 computer. I got a computer this week. $79 was what I paid for it. It's not fancy, but it gets the job done. In fact, if you go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com, you will see a newsletter that I typed on this $79 computer. The computer that I used to record the audio version of my book, Big Podcast, that was free. Got to put an asterisk on that, though. Dell sent it to me. They thought I was going to talk about it. Say, hey, here's a computer. I said, okay, cool. Anyway, complete story, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. My point, we have options. We have a lot of options, and you do not need fancy or expensive equipment to do great work. I've got a video that I've linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. A guitarist with one string and 61 million views. But I want to be clear, cheap, not necessarily better. Here's the differentiating factor. You need to do the work. I talked about this a couple of episodes ago here on Build a Big Podcast, specifically about how to get your first 1,000 podcast subscribers. If you have not heard that episode, it is at podcast.bigpodcast.com. It is a very simple process, but few will do it. And that is an opportunity. That's exactly why it stands out when you do. So if you want to grow your podcast, if you want to do good work, that's available to you, but you've got to do good work. Don't worry about the equipment. The equipment, not good work. Don't confuse spending money, consumerism, buying stuff with what you need to do to have a great podcast. We got enough people doing that. You will go broke and you will not reach nearly the amount of people that you want to. You want more info on this, more thoughts, the links to the guitarist with one string, the free computer that I've got, the story behind that, how you can do something similar? Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Hey, I got something for you. T2 Invites. T2 is a new social media network. It was created by ex-Twitter, Google, and Discord employees. It's invite only right now. It's in beta. I was one of the first 300 people on it. You can get on it because I've got an invite for you. Got a few of these left. They're at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. It is a very nice platform. Definitely worth a look. I'm putting together a podcasting community. By the way, I've got more invites in the pipeline. I can't get them fast enough. Don't let that keep you from going to newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I've got some there as of this moment. I'm getting more. Go there now. Get your invite to T2. You're going to like this. It's like Twitter, 280 characters. You're going to feel like you've seen it before. And one of the things you're going to notice is that it is a very nice community. A lot of podcasters over the last few months, I've seen them leaving Twitter. I'm one of those. I'm like, not really interested anymore. I mean, I'm there, got 9,000 something followers, arguably a big audience, but what does it matter if they've all left? I would rather start something fresh. have real conversations, not bots, not algorithms, not the pissy match between Elon and Mark Zuckerberg. You know, they're getting into some kind of jujitsu fight or something. Who cares? Who cares? You want real conversations about your podcast, how to grow your podcast? You want a T2 invite? Get one. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Episode notes on steroids. This is very cool. It's basically a database of everything mentioned on each episode, books, software, resources. Think of it as episode notes. And the more something is mentioned, the higher it is on the chart. It's almost like something gets an upvote every time it's mentioned. So if I mention T2, for example, and I've got it on this episode and the previous episode and the next episode, that's 3. T2 makes its way up the charts. It lets you keep track of what's popular on your podcast, what you're talking about, maybe what you should talk about. But it also lets the people listening know what it is that you're talking about. It is very cool how they did it. I call this segment Steal This Idea. So go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com. You'll see this right at the top. The headline is Episode Notes on Steroids. Let me know if you're interested in something like this for your podcast. I'm investigating doing something like this. I'll let you know how to do it. When I figure it out, I'll let you know how to do it. I'm looking at some different no-code tools. Super easy these days. You don't need to hire a programmer. These things already exist. And more or less, like I said, this thing is an upvote system. It's almost like suggestions for a website. Maybe you've seen that. Leave a suggestion. And if you like a suggestion that somebody else has left, you can upvote it. The more upvotes something gets, the more likely the developer of that site would actually pay attention to it. So go look at it. Episode notes on steroids. It's at the top of newsletter.bigpodcast.com. How to overcome writer's block. I was hanging out with a big wig social media guy. This was a couple years ago. We were going down the line at Chipotle. There was a guy in the kitchen with a huge steel bowl. He's mixing up the guac, man. So my friend takes a photo of that because he thought it was funny or something. A couple of days later, I see this photo. It's on his feed. He posted it with a caption and a story related to his audience. That is what being present to new content looks like. And when it comes to your podcast, it can be helpful to always be on the lookout for new episode ideas, new topic ideas. In that way, being present, always open to those new ideas. But even the best of us are going to hit writer's block sometimes. This is an article that I've linked. It's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com about the 5 biggest blocks that writers experience. And this is what they are. Number 1, not knowing where to start. Number 2, not knowing what to write. Number 3, not having enough time. 4, feeling overwhelmed. 5, feeling unmotivated. I don't know if I agree with that exactly. I think writer's block, maybe that influences it. And the reason is when I'm going down the line at Chipotle, I'm like this guy. Whether I'm there or anywhere else, I'm always on the lookout for new episode ideas because I'm always thinking about this stuff. If you're the same way, you probably are not experiencing writer's block. If you are reading books, articles, watching television, outliving your life, you are probably not experiencing writer's block if you're paying attention. Anna Wintour, editor of Vogue, kind of a big deal. September issue, if you've seen that documentary, she talks about always looking out the window. Always look out the window. She's in the back of cabs, limos, people driving her around. Always look out the window. And it's good advice. With that said, sometimes writer's block does strike. And if you're one of these people, not knowing where to start, not knowing what to write, not having enough time, feeling overwhelmed, feeling unmotivated, those things may be something for you to look at. There's solutions to all of them. If you want to talk about it, reach out to me. You know where I am. T2. Did you get your invite yet? Newsletter.bigpodcast.com for that. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Mastodon. I'd love to do a quick 20-minute Zoom call with you to find out more about where you're stuck. I'm doing a lot of these this week. I got a little space for a few more next week. So if you are interested in that, let's get on Zoom together. Let's talk about where you were stuck. I'm working on a new book. This is going to help me with that. We'll consider it a therapy session. No copay, nothing for sale. I'll sit there and listen to you. If you're interested, reach out to me, T2, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. You can find out more information about how to do that. Direct links, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. 15 Principles of Guest Booking. A few years ago, I was at a podcasting conference, and it was made up of 2 very distinct groups. Independent podcasters and people from NPR. I think this event was really into the celebrity thing. Oh, we've got people from NPR there. You can come see them. And that is a draw, so I can understand that. But the advice these guys were giving, it was completely different from the lives that most of the people in the audience were living. One of these NPR hosts, for example, she said, oh, let your producer handle that. And I remember thinking to myself, lady, read the room. Have you talked to this audience? These folks don't have producers. They're self-producing. They are doing everything. They're coming up with the ideas. They're outlining, they're recording, they're editing, they're producing everything. These people are in a completely different business from the one that you are in. They don't have a staff. With that said, NPR, they know radio, they know news, they know storytelling. So anything that they are doing in those areas, that is worth paying attention to. For example, they've got 15 principles of guest booking. Everything on the list is worth consideration. I'm going to give you about 50% of them right here, things that I think are the most important. Number one, before you make any calls, develop a core understanding of the conversation. That lady on the panel, she should have followed this advice. You've got to know who it is that you're talking to. You've got to know what it is that you want from those people or what you want those people to do. So before you make any calls to any guest, any potential guest, develop a core understanding of the conversation you want, what you want from them, what the episode is about. Number two, the most important quality in a guest is that they know what they're talking about. I'm going to tag on to that and say, the guest also needs to be able to explain what they're talking about in a way the audience is going to understand. With that said, you can help that through editing. You can help that through guiding them through the process. But if they don't know what they're talking about in the first place, then you are in trouble. So do not take a guest just because of a credential, just because of celebrity. Maybe what the guys on that panel had doesn't mean they can actually communicate the message. Your guest has to be able to communicate a message. Number three, don't let great be the enemy of good. That's advice from NPR. I agree with that too. Your guest does not have to be perfect. Again, you can pull them through that interview. You can edit. You can add your own dialogue. A guest should not be on his own when you're doing that interview. You are working with the guest to get the message to your audience. Number four, don't be afraid to bail on an idea that just isn't working. I've done that a lot. I've got tons of tape that I was very excited about going in or excited about the potential of. Maybe that's a better way of explaining it. It just didn't work out. Maybe I ditched it then. Maybe once I went through it, so this just isn't going to work for this story. Not to say it wouldn't work for another story, but not this story. So do not be afraid to bail on an idea, bail on tape, bail on a guest if the idea isn't working. Number five, if a potential guest is too dense, a little coaching might help, but it also might not. That's the caveat. This is what I'm talking about bringing a guest through the interview. You're on the radio every day. You're on a podcast every day. You know what a microphone is, how to speak into it, and you know what the end product is like that you are making in your studio. Your guest may not know that. So do not be afraid to give your guest a little coaching. I'll give you an example of this. Sometimes when I'm doing documentary work, and this is pretty common on NPR, and this is why I'm giving you this example. The person will introduce themselves and say what they do. It needs to be in a full sentence. David, big podcast. That's not going to work. Hi, my name is David Hooper, and I run a company called Big Podcast. It needs to be like that. So you would say to the guest, okay, that's great. I love the enthusiasm. You said your name clearly. You said your company name clearly. Do it in a full sentence. And I often give that advice before I roll any tape, and that is answering complete sentences. So if I ask you the question, for example, what did you eat for breakfast today? You don't say overnight oats or Fruit Loops or a donut. You'd say, this morning I ate overnight oats for breakfast. That's it. That's what a complete sentence looks like. That doesn't sound like a big change, but when you're putting your tape together at the end of that, yeah, it's going to be a really big deal. And you know how that end product is going to be laid out. You know what this is like because you've done it before. Your guests, they don't know. I mean, I'm a radio guy, right? Podcasting guy. And sometimes I'll come into these interviews. If somebody isn't there to guide me through it, I've got no idea what they're going to do with the content. It's a courteous thing you can do. You're not dumbing it down. You're helping them out. It's going to make them feel better. Guide your guests through the process. Number six, Temper guest expectations. I don't know exactly what that means here, but I will tell you this. I have a lot of guests. They think if maybe they're promoting something, let's say it's an album, a book, a live event, that simply being on my radio show or my podcast is all the work they need to do for promotion. And if that comes up, I'm like, no. This is part of a complete promotion. I'm glad you're here. And I think we can help get the word out about what you're doing. But this is not going to be everything or the only thing that you need to do. So you're going to want to temper expectations. Here's another way that comes up. You're doing a remote session. The guest needs to have his own mic. You say, what kind of mic do you have? Oh man, I'm just going to use my built-in laptop. And say, well, okay, we can do that. If you can. I would probably turn that down or try to get somebody to have another option. And this is how I would do it. I would temper expectations. I would say you can use that built-in laptop mic, but this is a broadcast radio show. I'm on a broadcast mic. You don't necessarily have to have something to the level that I do, but I'm going to sound much better than you do because the differentiation of mics. Here's a $60 mic on Amazon. You can get it in the next couple of days before our session. It's super easy to plug in, plug and play, USB. You've got the laptop. You'll be using that. This is going to make you sound like $1,000,000. People are judging you by your voice. This is going to make them listen to you. They're going to think what you're talking about is important just because you're going to sound so good. $60 is what that's going to cost you. Let me send you the link. That is tempering guest expectations. Because sometimes guests, they will hear you and they think, oh, I sound that good too. They don't. Then they hear the finished product. Hey, look, you can't polish a turd, man. You can't. You're using a built-in laptop mic and I'm using this mic. I'm good cleaning up audio. My engineer's great cleaning up audio. But there's only so much you can do. So you might want to consider tempering guest expectations in that way. Number 7, always thank your guest. Always. That day, during the session, immediately after the session, the next day, sometimes people will send out postcards, thank you gifts. It depends how you want to approach that. But always thank your guest. Guests are taking time to talk to you. Guests are a lot of times nervous. And it sounds like I'm giving a guest a hard time. You got to show up with a great mic. Yeah, you do. I mean, you want them to show up, right? But these guests are working to be on your show. And they're taking time to be on your show. So always thank your guest. There are 8 more of these. I've got them all linked. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. If you've got questions, comments, thoughts, do reach out to me. T2, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. I've got those linked too. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Remove background images for free. This is a great tool and a free tool that removes the background from images. It is perfect for social media profiles, custom episode art, so much more. You want to do custom art with your guest? Remove that crazy background he's got, man. Put his face right on that custom art. It looks so good. You can do that with this tool. No special knowledge of graphic design is needed. You upload everything to the site. One click, the background is removed. It does everything for you. I've got it linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. If podcasts were honest, I've got a funny video for you. It's also a very clever ad for earbuds. It's a little long. I think it's like 9 minutes, but I went back before I published it. I saw it a few months ago originally, and it kept my attention the second time. It came around again. I clicked on it. I thought, this is really good. I'm going to watch it a second time. Send it out to Big Podcast Insider. If you want to see it, and I think you're going to get a kick out of it. You're going to have a real appreciation for it because it is inside baseball when it comes to podcasting, a lot of inside jokes, and it's hilarious. If podcasts were honest, it's at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Classified ads. Swell AI automates writing podcast summaries, articles, social posts, and more. You can manage multiple shows in one dashboard, build custom templates for each show. It connects to Dropbox, Google Drive, and Zoom. It makes your production so easy. Imagine doing a podcast. And I talk to a lot of podcasters. They think, oh man, I hate doing episode notes. It's a drag, man. Hey, not anymore. Swell AI, that handles it all for you. You can get a free account to get started. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. TidyCal, the $29 podcast scheduler. If you're sick of recurring booking calendar fees. I used to pay $30 a month for my booking calendar. Not anymore. A lifetime deal on TidyCal is just $29. This is what I love about it. If you're tired of missed interviews, TidyCal automatically converts time zones. It sends confirmation emails. Everybody's on the same page. They know what day to show up. And that's no joke, because sometimes Friday night for you, it's going to be Saturday morning in New Zealand. So you can't say, oh, I'll see you Friday. Yeah, Friday to them? If you're in the U.S., completely different days, man. This is going to handle all of it, different time zones. You know, sometimes these half-hour time zones, like in India, 10 and a half hours, or is it 11 and a half? Well, depends if you're on daylight or standard, because they do not have daylight or standard. They just have standard. The United States, we've got daylight. So is it 10 and a half or is it 11 and a half? Well, don't worry about that. Let TidyCal do it. It's $29 for life. I've got it linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. You may be wondering, hey, how do I get an ad on Big Podcast Insider and also the audio edition of Big Podcast Insider? I've got a special just for independent businesses and podcasters. I've got discount ad slots available, $35. That's all it takes. If you want to reach an audience of dedicated podcasters with both the newsletter and the audio edition, that's this. You can check out the availability at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. When you are ready, here's how I can help you even more. If you like the newsletter, you like the podcast, you are going to love Big Podcast AMP. AMP, it stands for Audio Monetization Program. It's a personal coaching program. It has been designed to help you do three things. 1, grow your podcast audience. 2, get people talking about your podcast. 3, make more money with your podcast. I've got all the details linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Go there. It is cheap. And I'm not looking for bargain hunters, but again, I believe in podcasting. That's why I keep the cost of my ads cheap. That is why I keep the cost of group coaching cheap. I'm trying to make this available to you because I want you to go out and spread a message that helps people. Media, and I'm not an anti-media guy because we are the media, but we got to start taking control of it, man. We got to start getting these better messages out. Are you in? Great. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I've got all the information, Big Podcast AMP and otherwise. Go there now, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. And while you were there, why don't you subscribe to this podcast? Isn't it about time? Yeah, I know. I'm watching you, man. I see you listening to this. Don't come back to me. Let me come to you. And you can do that through a subscription. It is free. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I've got 3 buttons for you. 1 for iPhone, 1 for Android, 1 for RSS. An old-fashioned RSS feed. I still got it, man, because you're a podcaster and you know what I'm talking about. Click the button of your choice. 1 click is all it takes. You never miss an episode. I've got a QR code that you can scan. Hold your phone up to it. Shoo. That podcast gets sucked down from the Big Podcast supercomputer into your phone instantly, and you will never miss an episode. Everything that I do, you get it instantly. You get it free. Unsubscribe at any time. No hard feelings. Hey, man, if it doesn't work for you, but I think it will. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. That is how to do it. Go there now before you forget. Subscribe using the option of your choice. And I will see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast.